Imagine just for a few moments that you are in Jerusalem during the first century, watching the last moments of a person many say could be the most important man in history. As you look up, you see him crucified, and he is breathing his last breath. You see that he was beaten, scourged, and he looks like he may be wearing a bunch of thorns around his head. You see the Romans allowing a man and a procession of others to wrap his body, and they are carrying him off to be buried as his customs and laws demand. His tomb is sealed, and 3 days later, only his death clothes remain. I believe you know the rest of the story, but do you know about what was left behind? The story of the Shroud and its quest through time?
Searching for greatness in a sea of the dying and shameless, a sea of the aimless. I don't wanna be one of the nameless. I'ma wake up with the mindset that one day I'm gonna make it, and I don't think I'll be fine if I don't break my limitations. Don't try to stop me, I exist to write my own story. I'll make a decision if I want some peace or if I want the glory. Yeah, don't want a life that is complacent or possibly boring. I just want a life that is worth every day exploring.
Welcome to the Ancient Experience. I'm your host, Talon Tilford, the nerdy old man, who's been searching through the half bin of time to bring you this part one of this five-part series on an artifact believed to be the most studied artifact in history, the Shroud of Turin. All the research used to bring you this information is linked in the description. I will continue to update this list as other parts of this series are released. Please feel free to dig into it and make your own conclusion. I would love to hear from you, but please be respectful in the comments if you do decide to leave one. Here's the disclaimer. This is in no way trying to prove or disprove the story of Christ. Joe Friday would say just the facts, and that's my pledge to you. We are going to have to go over a lot of information that has been said before because I want you to know what we are talking about and that I'm not just making up some story to entertain you, but providing you with the provenance and the history of this relic, and that sometimes scientific testing cannot tell you the whole story. Sometimes you need a good story to make it resonate with people. Today we start our journey with what we know about this mystical artifact. Let's dig in. Let's start in the right place. You might be asking yourself, what is the Shroud of Turin? And that's a great question. An old teacher of mine would say that there is no such thing as a bad question. So let's start there. A death shroud is used to bury individuals. The Shroud of Turin is a 3-foot by 14-foot piece of linen cloth. And you may be saying to yourself, well, there's nothing special about that. Well, this cloth, there is an image of a man imprinted who has been crucified, badly whipped, and scourged. Some Christians believe that it belonged to Jesus of Nazareth. It's also known as the Holy Shroud, and it is located in Turin, Italy, at the St. John the Baptist Cathedral. It is considered to be a major religious relic and has had a lot of debate and controversy over it. This video will help you navigate through it. But first, we need to go over why this is an important and significant piece of history. Many Christians hold this in high regards, and for Catholics, they have more of a connection to it than others. Many parts of Christianity celebrate Jesus, along with most other religions, such as the Muslims, who view him as a prophet, the Hindus as a great holy man, and many more. The shroud, for many Christians, is a real artifact, and that they can see and touch it, a piece of Jesus, making him a real person and allowing them to connect with him more so than you and I could over this video. For some of them, it reflects the resurrection and the rebirth of life. For others, the story of Jesus, for them, is that he is the Son of God who came here to wipe out sin of the world and provide a path toward salvation. And that may be the most significant part of this artifact. I am sure there are other perspectives on the significance of this holy relic. The next question we should be asking is, are there any other relics of Jesus? And to that question, I would have to say, yes, many. We have the Holy Cross, which many people believe to be the cross in which Jesus was crucified on. We have the Holy Nails, and that many theologians believe were used in his crucifixion. The Spear of Longinus, the spear that pierced the side of Christ to see if he was dead. The Pillar of Scourging, the pillar that Christians believe Jesus was tied to when he was whipped by the Romans. The crown of thorns, used to represent Jesus being the King of the Jews. The Holy Coat, his robe, which was worn when he was arrested by the Romans. The Veil of Manalippo, which is part of the burial cloth and does match stains and blood type that we will get into more on the shroud. And there are many more. There are many relics held by the churches to raise money, and the better the relic, the more people came to see it. The shroud is just one. Now remember, these relics have not been verified as belonging to Jesus. No one was there that is alive, but they all have a compelling argument. Now we need to handle the question that is, what do we know about the Shroud of Turin currently? Well, to that I would say that we know a lot. In 1978, 33 scientists spent 5 days testing and analyzing the shroud continuously. They were part of the Shroud of Turin research project. It took them 3 years of studying to produce the results. They concluded that it was in fact a real person who had been crucified and scourged, which means beaten badly, and because of the bloodstains, they also believed that he had a crown of thorns associated with him. The bloodstains were in fact blood. They found hemoglobin and other blood proteins on the shroud itself, and they were able to conclude that it was not a product of art. In fact, it was a real artifact, and we will get into why that is important a little bit later. They were also able to pull mitochondrial DNA off the shroud, which was able to trace to a religious sect called the Druze, which lives near Galilee in Israel. And the blood type in which they were able to pull off was AB, which is common in the Middle East. They also had pollens that they were able to pull off the shroud from the Middle East area. In fact, a botanist, Dr. Jern from the Hebrew University, was able to identify 28 different species, and including most of them only grew around Jerusalem in the 1st century. We also have what is some modern enhancements of some images of writing believed to be on the Shroud of Turin. In 2009, Vatican researcher Barbara Farley, she was able to decipher faintly written words in Greek, Latin, and Aramaic found on the cloth. She states that the name of Jesus of Nazarene in Greek, along with 11 other words. She believes it's some form of death certificate, and that she claims that the inscription says Jesus of Nazarene, and states that it was the 9th hour when he was taken down, and that he was crucified in the 16th year of Tiberius. And now, not everyone believes in those letters and the writing to be on the shroud. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. I think it's very interesting. I think we should look into the technology aspect as it has been developed, and the usage of AI could be a huge game changer in what we might learn more about the shroud. It's also a huge opening for future research. So there are 2 aspects that have not been explained by practice or nature associated with the Shroud of Turin. One is the scorching of the image, and it's about the width of a hair deep on the shroud. There are many theories about how this happened, such as the one by mixing the body heat and the aloe of the body, in which they prepared for burial, and that's how it was possibly made. However, to be honest with you, this has never happened in recorded science before because the body just cannot produce that level of heat. So in 2011, the European Atomic Energy was able to replicate it for the first and only time, and they used a high-frequency ultraviolet laser for 40 nanoseconds. Now, to give you some context on the speed we're talking about, 1 nanosecond is a billionth of a second. That is a mind-blowing speed. Now the other part is the photographic negative, because the shroud itself is a photographic negative. And we discovered that in 1878 when the shroud was first photographed. It shows that the dark areas become light and the light areas become dark, and it makes it so you can see the image much clearer. You can see the wounds that the person sustained. You can also see the face and the head of the man that many believe to be Jesus. Now there are many theories about how this was done, but the one with the most traction at this time was made by John Jackson. He hypothesized that there was an intense flash burst of vacuumed ultraviolet radiation, which made a perfect 3D image of the body wrapped in the shroud. Jackson was able to eliminate most other ways, such as chemicals, vapors, heat. He stated that the image was created in such a way that even the natural ways of the body could not emit such radiation. This is profound knowledge and leaves little wiggle room to navigate with outside sources. Now, we need to get into the two aspects where the shroud has been disproven as being old enough to be from the time of Jesus. So let's get into those aspects. First, there is a carbon dating of the shroud done by 3 institutions. Those are the University of Arizona, Oxford University, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. They used an accelerator mass spectrometer for the test. And how that works is it measures the ratio of rare isotopes to the total number of atoms in the sample. They reported their findings as the cloth being between 1266 and 1390 AD. And that was not from the 1st century, but it was a medieval hoax. Now, there's a lot of debate about how the sample was taken from the shroud, as the shroud is linen, but the test shows the material was cotton and the coloring agent which was on the cloth to make it blend in. But you don't have to just take my words for this. One of the scientists who studied the shroud, Raymond Rogers, stated in a peer-reviewed article before his death that the edge from which the sample for dating was taken from showed anomalies in the weave. His conclusion was that the shroud had to have been repaired over the years. Now, there is some new information in regards to this. Dr. Cairo of Italy's Institute for Crystallology used a non-destructive method known as the wide-angle X-ray scattering, or the wax method, which is applied to ancient fabrics. This method penetrates the fabrics to analyze it at a microscopic level and to measure the deterioration of the linen threads. The sample has been compared to one from the Masada, Israel siege in 55 to 75 AD and is considered to be a good match for similar dating. That's only 20 to 40 years from when Christ is said to have died. The second part being a set of letters to Pope Clement II from the Bishop of Tours in 1389 and 1390. The letters asked the Pope to denounce the shroud, claiming that the shroud was a forgery and that the previous bishop knew who the artist was and had admitted to making it. Now, there is some truth that iron oxide and paint highlights were found to be on the shroud. The bishop also stated that the church knew it was fake and used it to raise money anyways. The Pope then declared that the shroud was a man-made object and not a relic, but a religious icon. The Pope stated that it could still be displayed at the church, and eventually it landed in Turin. Now, as a side note, Pope Benedict XVI stated that the shroud was in fact real many years later. But does this information change anything? Not for me. But does it lay the groundwork for the historical and factual story, the shroud, that will be woven into a beautiful tapestry by the end? Absolutely. Now, Is it the whole story of the Shroud? Is there anything else that could tell us the story? Of course there is. This is about the Shroud's journey through time, not just a snapshot. History has played a larger role in the Shroud than anyone has ever stated before. Stick with me as we have only scratched the surface of this epic tale. Now, whether you see it as a miraculous relic or a masterpiece of art and history, the Shroud of Turin continues to be a source of fascination. Its authenticity was questioned, but its impact on faith and science and culture are undeniable. Every year, thousands of people travel to witness its sacred presence, drawn by its quiet power of the image. Its quiet story, woven into the fabric of time, and in a world filled with questions, the Shroud asks us to reflect on the nature of belief itself, history, and the mysteries that transcend our understanding. The Shroud of Turin will continue to captivate, inspire, and challenge us for generations to come. Remember, get out and explore and question the world around you. If you feel like you've gotten some value of this presentation, all I will ask you to do is to share it with someone you think will enjoy this content. I would be grateful. Thank you. The Nerdy Old Man out.